So you're just trying to pop out all these numbers, which like half the time people didn't even understand.
This is like useless in my opinion. Like, who cares? Like, if you don't want this, don't be on social media.
Quantity begets quality, and you can't have quality without quantity.
Real talk backed up with real action. This is GTM News Desk.
I'm Nick Bennett.
And I'm Mark Hillens.
Let's see what's trending.
The first headline story for today is around Jony Ive. You know Jony Ive, Nick?
I do. Didn't he used to work for Apple?
Oh, yeah. He worked for Apple for a long time. Steve Jobs, partner in crime for a lot of different things. He's a famous hardware designer overall, but, hardware is something he specializes in. And if you look at this story, we found it in TechCrunch. It's been reported in numerous places, though, because it's a big deal. Finally, someone has the smarts to say, wait a minute, it'd be a lot better if we created some type of hardware to match to all of this AI hype. Meaning, if you try to just stick AI into an existing kind of hardware experience, I don't think it will go that well. We'll see. Apple just announced they have a ton of AI stuff coming out in the iPhone 16 and other versions that support it. But finally, someone is partnering with Sam Altman at OpenAI to say, look, let's design a actual piece of hardware that is specifically created for how people will and should interact with different types of AI. This is going to be fascinating to watch because I have hypothesized for a long time, software is great, but it's only as good as you apply in the context of something. And for AI, like right now, I think there's a lot of fucking talk about it, obviously. Not a lot of follow through though. It's pretty much like, do all these things, but how do you do those things? How do you do them on an ongoing basis? Like, show it to me in the context of my day in, life. But like, there's been a big missing void, and I'm optimistic that this news gets us closer to a future where AI fulfills its promises.
So I'm a huge fan of hers. And it's interesting because
why are you a huge fan of his? Have you never talked about him before?
Yeah, just because I knew he worked at Apple, and like I've always found like any story that ever came out from him, like I would always read it, and like I always just found it fascinating, like the stories I read when he was at Apple and like how he worked with like Steve Jobs and like how that all kind of like came together. And I'm using the iPhone 15, and I was a beta tester of their iOS 18. So I've been using like their newest like operating system for, I feel like, I don't know, like 5 months, 6 months or something. And I know it just recently came out, but I'm on now 18.1, which is where they start to really infuse the AI piece of it. And it's super interesting, but you can now take a photo and you don't have to go download any other software or anything, but just within Apple's, operating system, you can like remove stuff. And I tried this with a picture from our dinner the other night where it was, you, Mac, and a few other people. And I was like, can I just like remove like someone from this picture? So like, cause you think about it, like we take pictures often, like sometimes like you just need like a solo picture, and it's such a pain to like, how do you crop it? Do I have to put it into Photoshop? And like the AI that they've built into the iPhone, or I guess the software of the iPhone, like I was just able to like scribble out and poof, you were gone. And I was like, this looks like the photo was taken with you not in it. And I was like, that literally took 2 seconds. And I was like, now that is fantastic, and something that like, I can't tell you, like there's been so many times that I've needed a use for that. And like, I just haven't been able to do it. And like, now I did it in like less than 5 seconds.
There you go. Yeah. It will be interesting to see how it shakes out. They're trying to raise $1 billion, probably not even enough to build a new hardware device. Probably gonna take more than that, but it's going to take a few years. But I do think that's where it starts to become mainstream. Once they have a piece or pieces of hardware that bring to life the promise. Because without the smartphone, a lot of the talk about everything that was talked about in the 90s, and I was young, so I don't, remember all of it per se, but there's a lot of promises being thrown around how computers are going to transform your lives. Until a device small enough to help you transform your life, and even an actual watch, it was a lot of just garbage talk.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Let's dive into headline number 2. And Mark, I don't know if you've turned yours off, but this pissed me off. And it's interesting. I've been reading a lot about this, but LinkedIn has decided to enroll everyone that is a user. And I mean, they have over 1 billion users now, or I don't know if it's 1 billion active users, but they have 1 billion people on LinkedIn, I guess, as a platform. And so they have this new setting that says data for generative AI improvement. It says, can LinkedIn and its affiliates use your personal data and content you create on LinkedIn to train generative AI models that create content? Everyone has opted into that. So basically, you're now creating content for LinkedIn, which I guess Microsoft as well, which I'm sure that's the reason why this whole thing came about, is because of Microsoft. But like, you're consenting to use your data for training their own AI models, which like one, they're secretly collecting user data. It's a hidden setting. Like, to go and find this setting in your LinkedIn, it's buried under a bunch of other things, which is even scarier. Users have to opt out or your data gets harvested by default, which is like, why would you do that? And for me, this raises major privacy, major consent concerns. I know lots of people that were so pissed off about this that were like, I'm done with LinkedIn. And I don't know. It's just, if they explicitly told me this was going to happen and like told you about it, maybe I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. They told me about it. I get it. But like, to blatantly do it and enroll me without my consent, that just, rubs me the wrong way.
I actually don't think this is a big deal at all. And I'm actually surprised you're so upset by it. Really? I mean, because have you seen the other story about Meta? For 18 years, what they were doing?
No, I haven't.
For 18 years, since 2007, Meta has used all of that data to train all their AI systems. 18 years, Nick. Like, this is like useless in my opinion. Like, who cares? Like, if you don't want this, don't be on social media. I'm not surprised by this. I'm actually, this is probably the best kind of thing. It was leaked or someone told people about it before someone like Meta could do it for 18 years. I just don't understand why people are like pissed about this.
So you don't mind creating free content for Microsoft and LinkedIn?
We're doing it for Google. We're doing it for everyone right now. What's the difference? We're doing it for TikTok. I don't understand the difference there.
Again, but why couldn't they just like tell you?
Dude, it's because your parents don't tell you things. It's the same thing. It's the same reason. Like, you don't tell your kids things. Same reason, Nick. I mean, this really is like, I saw this story. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. So I can debate you on this. Because like, what I care more about is the algorithm bullshit. Like, I could care less about this stuff. Like, the algorithm needs data to be an algorithm. Like, whatever. Like, the AI stuff, yeah, it's probably pretty, black box, because AI is a whole different thing than an algorithm. Kind of it is, kind of it isn't. Because like, now they could use your IP to regenerate something for someone else and blah, blah, blah. But like, dude, like, that's already the cat's out of the box. It's a cluster right now with all that stuff, right? So until government at some point, could be 5, 10, maybe never down the road, regulate some of this stuff, I think we're at your own, you're just at your own free will. So yeah, to me, it's more like Google finally, after 25, 30 years, is saying like, look, and through some leaks, here's how the algorithm works. Yeah. I think if LinkedIn was really proactive, they'd be helping people understand the algorithm a bit better and actually doing like updates like Google. Like, I think LinkedIn is on the scale of like transparent from an algorithm standpoint, like not transparent at all. It's all over the place. That's what I hate about LinkedIn the most.
I agree. I also don't like that, because at least, and I'm not saying I do a lot on Twitter, but like, at least they're pretty transparent about their algorithm over there.
You mean Elon's playground?
Yeah, I mean, but I don't create, I guess I don't create content there to like care about.
I mean, maybe not. I mean, talk about someone scraping your data, like Elon. So I don't know, man. He's definitely using it. He's been forthright from the beginning. We are going to take all the tweets and all the stuff to like train the data.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's what we're opting into to do any social media these days without, I mean, I never read those, like when you sign up for something like, this is what you signed up for. I'm just like, scroll down, accept. I
mean, I think that's like the vast majority of people, right? Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk to Evan from UserEvidence here in a moment in the third segment. And it's going to be interesting to get his take on being customer first and using the voice of your customer in these things. Because these platforms, we are the product, not the customer. We are the product being the customer of their free service. And it's a very fast, slippery slope. And yeah, I think if you don't want this stuff to happen, you basically cannot be on any of these services.
100%. Well, let's dive in with Evan. Excited, and let's do it.
Let's go to segment number 3. Segment number 3, folks. It's been a good show so far. Our special guest today is Evan. Evan from UserEvidence. Kind of rhymes.
Yeah. Well, you sometimes call UserEvidence because it's my company. But
Was that intentional?
no, the domain was only $11 and it seemed to capture the space that we're in. So it popped out as a good choice.
I like it. Well, welcome to GTM News Desk. Tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm a reformed salesperson. I graduated from Stanford, and at the time, like finance was the cool thing, but it became not that cool, and I didn't learn any coding or anything. So got into sales kind of randomly at a startup, and then I've just been there ever since. Got into sales leadership, and then 4 years started this company, UserEvidence. So yeah, we're now 32 people, venture backed $9 million Series A 18 months ago, and based in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Whoa, that's quite the place to be living if you like an adult playground.
It is fun. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff to do. If you ski or mountain bike or anything like that, or sell SaaS, it's a good place to be.
I used to do both a lot, ski and mountain bike, but now with 3 very small kids, that has taken a back seat for the time being.
I hear you on that. Yeah, I have a 10-month-old and 3.5-year-old, and so yeah, my backcountry skiing is definitely taking a hit.
Yeah, we're all in the same boat. Nick has got twins. Nick's about to get his ACL fixed tomorrow. He'll become even stronger after that. UserEvidence. It's interesting because it's the literal name of what you do in the company. Like before we get into gathering UserEvidence and what this all means and everything, I love the background of you being a seller because I can kind of see the connection immediately out of the gate. But when you thought about creating the company and naming it and how it's evolved, kind of give us a little bit of a backstory. That'd be interesting.
I had sold enterprise software for a long time, and I had felt the problem that we solve. Like I would be in a deal with a healthcare company trying to sell a 6-figure deal, and they would always ask, "Hey, can you show me examples or case studies or whatever of someone that looks like me, my same industry, my same use case, and what kind of ROI that they got?" And I'd be like, "All right, well, crap, let's go to the marketing team. What do we got?" It's like, we got this story from State Farm Insurance. It looks awesome. Like it does look awesome, but it's not relevant to my buyer. But if you think about it, it's a hard problem to solve. Like if you're selling to 17 different industries across, 3 different personas and 5 different regions, it would be really tough to create stories and evidence across that whole spectrum of segments. But the insight that we have is that, software companies, they often have thousands of users now. So if you could somehow just unlock stories at scale from the thousands of plus users, that would solve that content relevancy problem.
Love that. Nick, you can ask the first official question, but I'm going to just plant something in your head, Evan. I've talked a lot about the importance of customer examples when selling, when helping your customers become successful. I'm just going to plant that seed, but Nick, take the first official question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, I've done customer marketing, so I've also lived this, but, how do you make gathering and using customer evidence not suck? Because let's be honest, like there's so much shitty stuff that's out there today, and it's like, you don't want it to suck. Like, how can you make it human? How can you make it personal?
Yeah, it's well, it sucks on 2 fronts. One, the collection process for the customer marketer stuff. I remember when I was at SurveyMonkey, I closed this $1.5 million deal with Wells Fargo, and the marketing team's like, "Hey, can you go get them to do a case study?" I was like, "Have you ever tried to get like a freaking Fortune 500 bank to do anything, like let alone like go on the record and publicly endorse you?" So it's a painful process to try to like extract the stories from customers because they don't want to talk publicly. They got legal PR or whatever. But then on the buyer side, it's tough. It sucks too because we're so skeptical. Like we've all seen, like, you go to every website, it's like 438% ROI. Like we're all going to save you time and money. And now there's like 50,000 tools that are all saying the same thing. And it starts to sound like noise. So the kind of like varnished case study that's like, this company was a great partner and delivered a bunch of ROI. I think we're just starting to kind of like discount it just because it seems so marketingified. So there's an opportunity at some point, I think, to go for humanized and like realism and get more specific with the actual, way that the product would use and what actual metrics it was driving, that kind of goes against the canonical marketing advice of like, we can't market features, we have to market benefits. People interpreted that so literally that we're all just saving time and money. Like, yes, all SaaS does. Like, we can't just boil it down. It's going to be the exact same.
Such a good point, because like I feel like it's just like anything, like all those review sites that are out there. Like, you think anyone like would write a crappy review? It's just like, even like your user stories. It's like, why would any company put out a terrible user story? They're trying to inflate their numbers, trying to make it look good. But like you said, it's all just, for me, and this was something when I was at Alice, we were in the gifting space. Like, yeah. I was like, our case studies and our user stories are so fluffy that like, you're just trying to pop out all these numbers, which like half the time people didn't even understand. So like, I'm with you 100% on that.
I think the special thing with review sites, like, it's a great place. We actually did our own like research study on this. We surveyed over 600 buyers and we asked them, where do you start your search and then where you finish it? And review sites and analyst reports were great places to start, right? Someone has done a lot of the mental work and, calculations of basically getting to a top 10 list. But what it doesn't help you do is once you've made that short list, something having a 4.62 versus 4.67, like, doesn't help us choose the solution. So there's a layer of depth and specificity that, again, review site's great to start, but I don't believe they've solved the whole entire piece and actually choosing the right vendor in your unique environment and tech ecosystem and all that.
Yeah, so there's a two-part question then. So customer story, case study versus customer evidence. Are they the same or are they different? And then the second part, what is customer evidence?
It's a great question. And it's kind of a term we're trying to define a little bit more. And the answer I would give is that case studies and testimonials are a subset of a broader superset, which is customer evidence. So they are one type of customer evidence. What else is in there is, I think one of the biggest things today is like statistical proof. One of the biggest challenges that we saw in our research to buyers in this environment, which makes sense. And let's characterize the environment. It is a conservative buying environment right now, right? Budgets are tight, bigger buying groups. People are just a little bit more hesitant to make a decision and they want to know that things are going to work and deliver value. Helping buyers create like a concrete business case around the value and the ROI was one of the biggest gaps that was preventing buyers from actually making a purchase. So another type of customer evidence is, broad-based statistical research and statistical proof that would substantiate claims around time savings or cost savings or latency reductions or increases in pipeline or whatever the metrics are that you use to build a business case. Competitive evidence was another one that stood out where, again, because there's so many damn vendors now and they're all saying the same thing, it's so noisy. And so the reaction from buyers was to kind of flee to what they perceived as safer options, which were bigger vendors, vendors that showed up in Gartner research and stuff like that. And so emerging vendors are having a really tough time getting people off of that default safe option. And customer evidence, in other words, being able to answer why should I choose you versus someone else, is a huge opportunity that emerging vendors are not, answering that question very well right now. But it is another type of broadly what I'd call customer evidence, which is direct proof and feedback from a broad base of users that would give you confidence in making a decision.
How do you gather this then? Or like maybe pick a specific type. I love how you broke down those types. Like what's a good way to gather customer evidence so that it is coming from the voice of the customer and not the brand?
I think it requires a variety of like channels or mediums. And it depends on the size of your customer base. If you two are my only customers, this is by far the most efficient way to get an interesting, depthful story is just talking to you one-on-one. However, if I'm Gong and I have 4,000 accounts, and at those accounts, there are, an average of 10 users, I have 400,000 users I need to talk to. I can't go do this with 400,000 users. So you need some sort of one-to-many scaled way of capturing the feedback. But now we have, let's say, so surveys are one way to do that. But now we have another problem where we have 5,000 responses and we need to somehow make sense of it and start to divine the kind of key salient themes and what they like and what they don't like. I would recommend, a combination of both, like scaled one-to-many, feedback collection. But it is also important to augment that with, really in-depth, organic human conversations. Just as an example, we are obviously more on the scaled side. Like our product helps capture feedback from hundreds of customers and then build content or proof off of that. But we hired a win-loss firm to do manual human interviews like this with our lost deals, and they've got an incredibly rich set of insights. So you need a spectrum of different levels to engage customers to get feedback, I would say.
It's almost always both. You got to do both. I mean, unless you're really small, to your point, then it kind of, the scale thing doesn't make as much sense.
Right, yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right, we'll dig deeper, but go ahead, Nick. You can ask the next question. I will go down a rabbit hole, and I just won't shut up about this because this is such a passion of mine, Evan. Like, going back to my early days of HubSpot, the importance of, we said solve for the customer, and then at Drift, it was put the customer at the center of everything you do. Now it's become kind of like just this thing that people say, and it's become kind of just garbage, but I'll go back on my soapbox in a minute, but go ahead, Nick.
Let's talk about the biggest mistake from marketers when it comes to gathering and also using customer evidence. Like, what are the things that you see? Because we try to make these somewhat tactical, and we want people to be like, all right, listen, like, you're doing this, please stop, and this is a better way to do it.
This is another thing that came out of our recent report too. And this is not marketers' fault, but it is that they're missing a little bit on it. Executives, and particularly like brand and corporate marketing, put so much pressure on marketers, and particularly customer marketers, to get the biggest, best, shiny logos. Like, we want Wells Fargo, right? We want State Farm. And it makes sense, right? The CEO loves it. Like, if you can use it in earnings reports and stuff like that. But they take forever to create, and there is diminishing marginal return to that ninth awesome logo. And the cost of that is you are underinvesting then on creating scaled content across a diverse representation of your customer base. And the person that feels that pain, in my example before, is sales and these more tactical go-to-market functions. Like, your investor deck will look sick, your homepage will look awesome, but even if it's a big company that has all the resources in the world, like Salesforce, for instance, like, you're going to have some mid-market rep that sells a particular product line, a particular region that needs a specific story against a certain competitor, and they're not going to have it, right? So I think the error is an overinvestment in brand or corporate marketing oriented polished stories at the expense of scale, diversity, and representation across, a larger portfolio of customers.
Yeah, I like that. I was, before I did customer marketing, I did account-based marketing, which this also comes very, it's an important part of, but I also did field marketing for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And one of the companies I used to work for, Clary, which was in the forecasting space, they had this impressive wall of logos. And it was interesting, when I was developing a lot of the programs, they cared a ton about the logos, and I was just like, okay, you have logos on the wall in the office, cool, I get it. People go there, you have it on the website, like you said, you have it in your board decks, investor decks, stuff like that. But we didn't scale the content the way that I thought we should have. I completely agree with everything that you just said. It's just and I've not only experienced that once, I've experienced that multiple companies now.
I think it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, if you're a really early stage company, that you do need that logo wall to demonstrate that you've sold to enterprise. And once you hit Gong or Clary, it's like, all right, we get it. You work with big companies, right? It's like, we knew that anyway, right? It doesn't differentiate yourself any further. There's this interesting question that gets posed to me sometimes, is quality better than quantity when it comes to customer stories? But if you think about what makes quality, and again, we asked buyers this, and one of the biggest factors is a story a quality, useful story, is relevance. Like, does it look like me? Can I see myself in their shoes? Same industry, same use case, same tech stack. And you cannot accomplish that sort of relevance unless you have quantity, ironically, right? Because if you sell to 17 different industries, in order to serve each industry, you need 17 stories. So ironically, our quantity begets quality, and you can't have quality without quantity.
Like I said before, it's almost always both, which, as I listen to you talk, Evan, to me, one of the key things that makes customer evidence extremely successful is specificity.
Uh-huh.
You were saying relevance, but also resonance, which is a derivative of, relevance. Yeah. But tell us more about specificity when it comes to these different types of customer evidence and how that's important.
So one thing that came out of our study as well is the technological environment is getting so much more complex, right? We all want to consolidate tech stacks, and we all need our stuff, especially in MarTech, to talk to each other and work together. So it's not enough to know, do you like the product? Let's just choose a specific example. Let's say it is, Clary forecasting or something. I need to know that it works in concert with Salesforce as my CRM, and Gong is my thing, and also I have a PLG motion with an enterprise motion on top of it, and my ACV is 50 to 75K, because that's a very different motion than 500 to a million. So there's all these factors and permutations that help me as a buyer. Like basically I'm trying to do a calculation in my head is like, is this thing going to work? The more like a similar customer, the less I have to put like a, kind of a discounted unknown on it. Right. And then it's like, all right, if this is exactly me, then I know it's going to work. So I think that's the specificity is a more tactical examination of how the solution works in a particular environment and what that customer actually did. Like one trick I love that's kind of a trend, right? Not a trend because not many people are doing it because it's a good idea though, is framing customer stories in the context more of like a playbook. So we did this from one of our best customers, which was Gong. It's not Gong case study. It's here's Gong's playbook on exactly how they use user evidence to accomplish, whatever the heck it is, right? So that framing in a more tactical guidance lens, I think is a great way to up the credibility and interestingness of a story relative to, polished marketing case study. Mutiny
does this a bit.
Yeah,
some of their language, right? Yeah, Mutiny.
They have great content, tactically helpful, insights laden. That's good stuff.
Cool. All right. Let's dive into the last question of this segment. What's the most common misconception from executives about either gathering or using customer evidence? Because I've worked for a lot of execs, either reporting directly to the CMO or working directly with the CEO. And not all of them are, funny enough, believers of this, which is even more mind-blowing. But I'm curious, what's the most common misconception that you've seen from executives?
I think the most common misconception, other than how much work it takes to do this well, customer marketers get their ass kicked because hey, what the heck? You should be creating way more. Nick, you know that. They also, it's just tricky because that function doesn't really have a seat at the executive table. They're very beneath product marketing or corporate marketing. And so that's its own problem. But I would say the biggest misconception from executives is kind of narrowly framing it as case studies or just testimonials, right? As this checkbox thing that we need to have some of them on our website. There's a much more interesting and diverse range of applications for customer evidence. I'll give you an example. Gong does this incredibly well. That's a competitive space, especially now that all of them are building these suites, right? And so what they've done really well with user evidence is create really rich, interesting, competitive enablement content. So they did an entire survey around why people switched from Chorus that looked at, what are the differentiators and features that Gong has that Chorus doesn't? What was it like to migrate to kind of nullify the concern people would have that migrating is going to take a lot of time? What's been the impact post-switch? And that generated a ton of proof that was we switched from Gong to Chorus and back again, and Gong's lights out. Gong's, analytics are better, whatever it is. So if you're a salesperson there and you get asked, why should I choose you versus Chorus? Rather than being we're the market leader. Gartner rates us, we're here in the quadrant and Chorus is, slightly over there. They can now point to, 178 people that have switched from Chorus and be like, hey, don't take my word for it. Here's actual evidence from these users on why they switched. So that's just one example. Industry proof would be another one, but ROI data would be another really good one. But yeah, if you narrowly just peg it to case studies and testimonials, you miss this opportunity to essentially have your customers go out and be your best salespeople. And obviously customers are going to be way more credible than, anyone on your go-to-market team.
Yeah, we're big believers in this idea of called or named integrated revenue campaigns. So you bring a message and a set of offers to the market between marketing, sales, and CS teams, and you do this for specific audiences at specific points of the customer journey. Two things on this, and love to get your take on it, Evan, before we go deep in the exclusive content with you. First off, it seems like every campaign you run, based off the statement you just said, should have some form of customer evidence, even top of funnel. But any type of campaign, there has to be some type of customer evidence included as part of the messaging and or offers. And then additionally, you should probably have almost an always on campaign that is always running, that's more mid to bottom of the funnel, that brings to life the right type of customer evidence for the type of buyer you sell to always present to them something that's in their language and coming from someone that they might know or respect. Agree, disagree? How would you expand that?
Yeah, I agree with that. Particularly, so your first statement, customer evidence can be used for any sort of campaign touch point through the whole thing. Just as an example of that, though it may not sound like customer evidence, it is in a way, or early top of the funnel, nurturing type content, right? So there is a good opportunity to use customers in a couple ways. One is best practices type content. That's not necessarily our customers love us and they're seeing a ton of value, but more tactical, here are 9 ways people are using Gong for forecasting or something like that. So these kind of more educational advice, tactical guidance, I think is a great way to use customers early in the funnel. The other one that maybe is not exactly customers, but the methodology is the same, is more industry trends, market research. So, an asset that performed really well for us is this report I've been talking about where we surveyed 600 buyers. That 2024, state of customer evidence is got way more leads than any other type of asset that we've gotten. So surveying the market and so that people can see from their peers, like, where do they think the market's going, I think is a really interesting asset type. So yeah, people traditionally think of customer evidence as a kind of like bottom of the funnel, we're at the end of the sales cycle, they need to see a case study. But if you can include it through the whole buyer's journey, and if you have the sophistication, if you're using Mutiny or something and you can serve it up in a targeted way where it's, all right, we're going to show the healthcare testimonial to the healthcare prospect, obviously bonus points for that too.
All right. For everyone that's listening, we're going to be going over to TAC Network where you can find the exclusive. Evan's going to share kind of his proven framework. We're going to be talking about some deep tactical best practices when it comes to go to market. So we will catch you on the other side shortly.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of GTM News Desk, presented by the TAC Network. To hear our full conversation with our guest today, head to the link in the show notes to subscribe to the TAC Network. Until next time, I'm Mark Killens.
And I'm Nick Bennett. Keep it people first, everybody.